Okay, so we are here at the World Autism Summit with the famous, wonderful Tim Conway. And I'm going to start out by introducing him. He is a wonderful person. 30 years ago, Dr. Tim Conway traveled across country from California to Florida for what he thought would be a short work assignment. His aunt, a renowned speech pathologist, had asked him to visit Gainesville and conduct a 3-week research project related to dyslexia at a place called the Morris Center. As it turned out, Dr. Conway's 3-week assignment was just the beginning of his connection to the Morris Center and his journey helping kids and adults struggling with neurodevelopmental disorders. In the 30 years since that cross-country trip, Dr. Tim Conway earned his PhD in clinical psychology with a concentration in neuropsychology from the University of Florida, where he is also an affiliated research assistant professor. He ultimately purchased the Morris Center in Gainesville, where he initially conducted research. He then later became the co-founder and volunteer president of the board of directors at the Einstein School in Gainesville, the first charter school in the US to provide free evidence and research-based education to children with learning disorders. Dr. Conway's background as a clinical research scientist has produced a full resume of research in the areas of dyslexia and other learning, language, and sensory disorders. His research findings guide the evidence-based transdisciplinary methods used in the Now company, an online ed tech company for which he is the CEO, and the Morris Center clinics now operating in Ocala, Trinidad and Tobago, and Birmingham, Alabama. Through his 2 organizations, Dr. Conway and his team treat clients from countries all over the world, including India, Venezuela, Germany, China, England, and the Virgin Islands, to name a few. So I guess it's no wonder why I invited Tim Conway to this World Autism Summit, everybody. And I wanted to get through that beautiful, beautiful bio so he can share his wealth of information with you. So welcome, Tim Conway.
Thank you, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for taking the time to help organize this event and help parents learn more about evidence-based science and what it can do to help empower parents, help us empower kids. And whether the child has autism or some other learning disorder or no learning disorder, our goal should be to help every child grow and empower to become the best they can be. And I love the mission you have with the World Autism and Autism Today.
Thank you so much. And we're trying to get every corner of the world, whether it's Africa, Asia, Thailand, anywhere, we want every corner of the world to be helped by what we have in North America, what we have everywhere. So tell us, what inspired you to be part of the summit?
Well, one, it's because you've got a long history yourself. And I know your own personal background with a mother of multiple children. I believe it's 6, right?
7.
7. Okay, great. And I'm the youngest of 5. Love the big families. And then you had a son who had autism as well. So you have the personal connection and love that what you've done to try to help bring information, bring awareness. And the goal is to help empower families to how make educated choices with their limited resources.
Yes.
There's lots of opportunities for services, but the question is, but which ones are going to give the best outcomes for my child? And the more we help parents get that information, the more we can help children be empowered to be their best version of themselves, or what I say is have the best number or the largest number of strengths to pursue and do whatever they want to do, not just whatever they think they can do.
That's really, really a good point. We want everybody to do what they want to do and not be pigeonholed and not be told what to do. It's very important. And what is your why? Like, why do you want to do this?
Well, I have a familial background in empowering others. So my father had a master's degree in art, but he progressed because of his psychological prowess and his love for people to a position where he was the second in charge of the Department of Mental Health for the whole state of Missouri. Wow. So I grew up in a family where my father was passionate about helping empower children and families. And when you grow up in that environment, you learn to love that, and you learn to love the joy of seeing others improve and others expand their skills and families have more healthier function. It's a very rewarding thing to do. And my mother was first a musician, music teacher, then a music therapist, and then went back to college and got her master's degree at age 50 and started a whole new career at age 50 in learning disabilities. And they did that because My dad's older sister was a world famous speech pathologist, and she and her husband built a very large corporation, also focused on helping empower children and teens and adults with learning disabilities. And her name was Patricia Conway Lindemood. And the Lindemoods built a very large entity in the private sector. And so I've grown up around this environment. I'm fascinated by the brain. And so at the age of 19, I chose to go work with Pat and Charles Lindemood and learn more about their developmental science approach to learning disabilities. And that also allowed me to begin to partner and work with a neuropsychologist, Dr. James Leung, who is a graduate of UCLA's clinical psychology department, and work with a neuropsychologist at the same time of working with this world famous speech pathologist and linguist. And that basically started the fire and the spark of, this is fascinating stuff. Let's learn more so we can do more.
That's great. I understand there's a lot of studies that are aligned with the work that you do. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a big believer in the importance of evidence-based practice. And I encourage parents to really understand what that term means medically versus how some folks who are maybe educators or they may be laypersons, or they actually may also be within the healthcare fields, are using the same term, but with a different definition. So to the scientist, evidence-based means you published a scientific study. You followed certain parameters of research design to make sure that you had the best understanding of when you did treatment A and you got results B, that it was really the treatment that probably caused those results, not something else. So the Morris Center was opened in 1986. It was the pioneering vision of a developmental behavioral pediatrician, and her name was Dr. Ann Alexander. And Ann had the really unique background in that she was not only a developmental behavioral pediatrician, but she had done 3 residencies at Duke. She did a residency in child psychology, another residency in child psychiatry, and a 3rd residency in child neurology. So taking those 3 additional higher level trainings on top of her developmental behavioral pediatrics background, she had a really unique depth and breadth of knowledge about brain development. And so she founded the Morris Center to be a transdisciplinary team of healthcare professionals in pediatrics, speech pathology, clinical psychology, neuropsychology, and occupational therapy, along with some educators who were part of the whole team. And so I began working with them in 1989. The clinic was only 3 years old. And we published a pilot study in 1991 saying, hey, look, using this transdisciplinary team approach, here's 10 kids that on average made anywhere from 3 to 5 grade levels of gain in their reading skills. And typically it was in about 9 weeks' time. And we had not seen anybody publishing research like that. We caught the eye of some researchers at Florida State. They partnered with us, and we took that pilot study paper that they had helped us publish to Dr. Joe Torgerson, and we began to do 3 5-year randomized controlled trials. And to give that knowledge base to parents to understand what is a randomized controlled trial, think of what is the science that built penicillin? What is the science that built most every major medical treatment? What is the science that built most every major successful medication? It's called randomized controlled trials. That is the gold standard of research. So our goal as clinical researchers at the Morris Center was do the research to figure out what might be the most effective way to both prevent dyslexia's reading problems and empower the child's language skills, and also remediate dyslexia's difficulties in phonological awareness, reading skills, spelling skills, and some other areas that can co-occur. And so those scientific research studies helped us really pioneer our intervention that today is owned by my ed tech company. That program is called Neurodevelopment of Words, is the Now company. But the Neurodevelopment of Words company owns a program called Now Foundations for speech, language, reading, and spelling. That's the developmental hierarchy. So we use that program in the medical clinics. We use that program in our online ed tech delivery of services, webcam to webcam all over the world. And we also use that program in our free charter school in Gainesville, Florida, that you mentioned, called the Einstein School, where we're showing schools it's not a budget problem that you have. You have plenty of money It's what you're purchasing. If you're not purchasing evidence-based programs that have been tested and proven successful by randomized controlled trials, you have less likelihood of really helping empower the students and helping the students leave special ed.
Wow, that is very, very powerful. You know, you have to test things, you have to analyze them with the proper tools, or you're not going to get anywhere, basically.
Exactly.
Buy the right stuff, right?
Exactly. And many parents don't understand that education and healthcare come from two very different perspectives. Education comes from what we call ideology and philosophy. It's what I think and what I feel. Because typically in education, it wasn't a scientifically research-based practice. You just worked with the child, you exposed them to what seemed to be good literacy practice, you gave them some activities, and you watched the child develop. But the healthcare model is, the brain pretty much works the same for everybody. It's got 8 sensory input systems. And the question is, are those 8 communicating together efficiently? And are they building level 1 skills and then higher level 2 skills and then higher level 3 skills? How efficiently is the brain building these skills? And if it's not, what can we do about it? And so then we do these evidence-based research studies to figure out what can be done. And that helps us know what's going to be most effective. There's a new podcast out that's 6 episodes. It's called Sold a Story. And there a journalist goes through and explains some of these investigative journalism she did to find out why is one of the nation's most popular literacy curriculums not effective, but it still keeps selling like crazy. The reason is because nobody was required to test it and prove it's more effective than anything else. They did enough work on the PR marketing side of it to get enough schools using it. And that's what we in science call it. It was the next edu celebrity. It's the popular thing that's happening and everyone gravitates to it. And it becomes this almost cult-like following for this, zeitgeist or this genre of thinking. And everyone throws themselves into it because teachers are passionate people. My mother is a retired special ed teacher. But if we don't give teachers the highly tested and proven methodologies, then letting them make it up I guess the analogy would be if we didn't give physicians antibiotics, but we said, you know what, you understand chemicals, you understand the brain and the body, we don't need to give you penicillin. Here's a chem lab. You mix which chemicals you think is going to be best for that patient. And if you think it might be a different mixture for the other, you just try it out. And if it doesn't work, it's not your fault. Their body just worked differently. And we've invented these very scientifically flawed concepts of that children's brains work differently in education and that no one program works for all kids. And scientifically, we say that's not true. And that's why we do these high caliber research studies. So the goal is help parents understand how to be highly educated consumers and know what programs have the best chance of making the best outcomes and not wasting their limited resources, time, and energies on things that are more made up and really are not scientifically tested and proven effective.
Yeah, I think that's really, really true. And people also have a tendency to stay stuck in the past.
Yeah. They kind of put their eggs all in one basket and they stay there. And that's what we want to get rid of. And in science and healthcare, we have new discoveries every year. We have new treatments coming out every year. I have the privilege of saying, I have a brother who's also a brain scientist. You'll see commercials on TV with Whoopi Goldberg and Khloe Kardashian and even Lady Gaga talking about their migraines, Karen. And they'll talk about this medication. It's called Nurtec ODT. And they'll talk about how it changed their life because it stops their migraines. They can function better. My brother, Charlie Conway, is the scientist who led the team that built Nurtec ODT.
Wow.
And it's from science. He did 25 years of just arduous research to get to that point of having this molecule that created this new medical medicine that has been highly successful at helping improve the quality of life for the 1 billion people in the world who suffer from migraines. But that comes from science. It comes from research. So when we tell educators that no one program works for all kids and every kid's brain works differently, that's not coming from scientists. That's coming from people who are laypersons or they don't really quite understand the brain, because science tells us, no, the brain's got 8 inputs and every kid has those unless there's some type of brain damage or unless they had a neurological injury during birth, like a stroke, then they might be missing some of those systems. But when all the systems are there, we know the brain pretty much needs the same experiences to build the learning skills that we call phonological awareness, which fuel the speaking skills. It fuels listening comprehension skills. It fuels reading skills, spelling skills. There's a whole developmental cascade of how the brain works.
Wow. My brain's hurting from that.
I should have warned you, Karen. My nickname is a tsunami of information.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've spent 38 years of my life now just studying the brain, literacy, and neurodevelopmental disorders as well, which means autism, language disorders, low IQ, ADHD, SLDs in reading, specific learning disorders in writing, specific learning disorders in math. And I did 10 years as a stroke rehab scientist, trying to figure out how do we rebuild reading skills when part of the left side of the brain is gone.
Wow.
The stroke cut off the blood supply, the brain lost the blood supply to it, and the brain tissue dies, and we can't regrow it.
Whoa.
But we can build new connections across the brain tissue, that's still there. And so I spent 10 years also using another version of that Now Companies program, the Now Foundations program. We modified it a bit. I published a paper on it back in 1998, showing that it actually was highly effective at rebuilding reading skills, even when there was brain damage. And so our clinics are really focused on all neurodevelopmental disorders that are genetic, as well as disorders that are acquired. People have stroke and they lose functions. They might have to have a tumor removed from the brain, and that might compromise some of their brain functions. They might have to have radiation therapy of the brain, and that damages part of the white matter, which might change some of your ability to function. But Karen, the brain is fascinating. 100 billion brain cells building 100 trillion connections. It's ripe for learning, but there's 6 principles that you have to follow. It's the intensity of the practice or training. Mm-hmm. It's the frequency of the practice or training. It's the specificity, how explicit and specific is the training directions. It's the developmental hierarchy. You train basic skills first, mid-level skills second, advanced skills last. And then the 5th thing is almost more important than the first 4, that frequency, or how many days per week, which should be 5, that intensity, or how much time per day, should be at least about 30 to 50 minutes per day at minimum, can go up as much as 6 hours a day. That specificity means it could be really clear directions, and that developmental hierarchy, those will be undermined by this last thing, which is duration. Mm-hmm. Do you do this instruction for a week and stop? You can, and it probably will, all the results will go away because you didn't do it long enough for the brain to rebuild wire and build new wire, and it becomes highly automatic. And then the last piece, the 6th piece, is you have to train generalization. You take those skills that you've built in the clinical laboratory, or in the Morris Center Clinic, or in the Now Companies online training, or in an autism center, and you got to practice those same skills in a different environment. How do those skills carry over to home, and how do you help empower the parents to help reinforce and support the growth of new skills at home that a child has learned in the clinic? How does that carry over to schools, what they could do in the classroom? So you're trying to generalize those skills across the different environments. And when we follow those 6 principles, we have the best chance of making the most growth or gains across a wide range of difficulties, including autism, including dyslexia, and learning difficulties as well.
It makes me think about traveling around the world and how everything is seen from so many different perspectives.
Yeah.
It's always different, and it's always very unique and very important. And that's what makes me think about. But it's very, very interesting. Many individuals on the autism spectrum also face learning challenges. How does your company approach to addressing learning disorders align with the unique needs and strengths of individuals with autism?
Well, we know that in autism, we still have a lot of things that we don't know. Mm-hmm. We don't really have a rock solid understanding of what causes it. Whereas theories, there's ideas, but there's no really clearly defined cause. In dyslexia, we know it's genetic. We know it runs in families. We know it affects this language side of the brain that's going to interfere with a skill called phonological awareness, mm-hmm. which is your ability to perceive sounds and judge sounds. And we know that's going to affect your reading and spelling skills. In autism, you could have language difficulties, or you might not. They might be mild, moderate, or severe. You could have some visual processing difficulties, again, mild, moderate, or severe. And you could have some auditory processing difficulties, mild, moderate, or severe. You could have some combination of both. You could have some tactile differences in how well you perceive touch. It might be more aversive because it feels more like a pinprick. And it might be what we call hyposensitive, which is underregistered. You don't even feel the touch when somebody's touching you. And so you've got this wide range of difficulties across this wide range of continuums. So in the Morris Center Clinic, we're doing a comprehensive transdisciplinary team eval. You're measuring all of those skills from a speech pathology perspective or lens, which is all language focused. You're measuring all those skills from an OT lens, who's looking at the 8 sensory systems. It's visual, auditory, tactile, it's smell and taste, and then it's vestibular, which is balance. It's proprioceptive, which is body awareness. It's interoceptive, which is your internal awareness of things like your energy level, internal awareness of your toileting needs, internal awareness of your mood, of your sleep needs, and it's all those 8 systems working together. And OTs who are trained in a developmental model are the best ones to assess the efficiency or inefficiency of how those 8 skills are processing. And then we also look at it from the clinical psychology, neuropsychology perspective, which is the cognitive skills of memory, of language, of motor, of learning, also mood behavior. And then we go to the academic skills of reading, writing, spelling, math, and literacy skills. And so then we cross-compare that data and figure out what's the presentation of strengths and weaknesses for this child with autism versus this child with autism. And then you try to design a treatment plan that goes to the lowest level systems and builds up. So if a child has reading problems, which is up here, but they also have language processing problems down here, and they have oral awareness problems, which is more OT, and they have some other visual tracking problems, which is more OT, there's really very little point at working at reading if you haven't shown up the foundational skills. The analogy would be, if you're not really good at algebra, we could just go straight to working at algebra. But if we find out you're not good at addition, and you're not good at subtraction, and you're not good at multiplication, we're kind of wasting our time working at algebra until we go and strengthen the lower level skills. So that's the approach that the Morris Center clinics take, whether it's autism, whether it's a language disorder, whether it's dyslexia, doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. Our goal is identify all the strengths, identify all the weaknesses, and see how many of these weaker skills can we strengthen to help give the child more strengths, and then ratchet up those more complex skills. And that goal is, it's actually an upside down pyramid. There's a PhD occupational therapist named Lucy J. Miller. She built this beautiful, colorful pyramid, and I'll send you a copy of it, Karen. You're welcome to show it on the website because we give all the credit to Dr. Miller. She's out in Colorado. And it's an upside down pyramid. And the 8 sensory systems are down here. And then on top are social skills and language skills. And so her model really clearly defines that if you don't work at the foundation, it's the tipping point for everything else. So if these aren't rock solid, these skills above it are not going to be as likely to develop quite as well. But the very top bar of her pyramid is a French term, and I'm probably not going to say it right, but I'll give it my best shot. I believe it's joie de vivre, and joie de vivre means the joy of life. And the reason why she put that at top is because when all of the sensory, motor, and language systems and attention and mood systems are all working efficiently, then the child, the teenager, the adult, they're more likely to be able to adapt to their environment. And that means they're actually able to have more positive engagement, positive interactions, and joyful, in rewarding interactions, whether it's a church environment, school environment, work environment, social environment. They can adapt and actually have the best quality of interactions that they choose to have and that they are interested in pursuing.
That's great. It's like you have to walk before you run, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
That's brilliant. I know Lucy Miller. She's great.
Oh, good. Yeah. She's got a fabulous, her center typically focuses on 5 and under, and really working on that engagement level of getting the child able to engage with the environment, engage with the parent. And that's some really important work. And she leads a national conference each year. And she usually also leads a research conference, or every other year or every year as well. And so that's great that she's out there promoting more research in the area of sensory integration, registration, modulation for that occupational therapy profession.
Right. Would you highlight some of the innovative approaches and technologies your company has developed to support individuals with neurodevelopmental disorders and how these solutions are making a positive impact on their educational experiences?
Absolutely. So again, we talked about how we did a study in 1991, and then we did these 3 5-year randomized controlled trials. And from all of that work came one program, and that's our core language program. And so what we really see that program is able to do is that program, whether you have autism, if you've got a level of engagement and you're instructional, then we can use this program even in autism. If the child doesn't have language yet and really doesn't have focus and orientation skills yet and really can't be verbally directed to do things yet, then this program's not ready yet. This program's too high level. Those individuals will go best to an intensive autism type of, an intensive OT type program because of the severe autism. But if it's mild or moderate autism, we can use this same developmental science approach to build those receptive expressive language skills and then to begin to build the actual literacy skills. So our unique contribution to the science of it all is taking a neurodevelopmental approach, understanding all of these sensory motor systems, measuring them, working to change them, and then when we finish treatment, you remeasure them. Because then you get an independent view of what could the child do before treatment and what can the child do now after treatment. But then you also query from the parents, what do they see happening at home? What changes have happened? Has Johnny become more able to engage in different environments? Is Johnny actually now using more language and communicating verbally more than he was before? Does Shalala really now have a much more focus and engagement on what's happening around her? And is she participating more with others, with family? So you're looking for the functional change as well as the quantitative change from testing that helps us measure these skills. So the innovation that we're really focused on the most right now is that transdisciplinary team developmental science. And let me explain what that means. Transdisciplinary means the OT knows the sensory motor system, but they're not usually well-trained in language. The speech pathologist is usually well-trained in language, but usually knows a lot less about the sensory motor system. So when a speech therapist gives a speech test, they view it and interpret the results from the lens of language. When the OT gives their test, they view it from the lens of sensory motor skills. But take, for example, the OT is trying to measure the child's ability to do 3-step directions. They might call it a praxis test, which is motor skills. And they realize that, Nakina really can't do 3-step praxis tasks. So she has some motor skill deficits. But Karen, then we find out from the speech pathologist that you can give Lakina 3-step anything, and whether it's praxis or anything, she can't hold on to 3-step directions. So the OT problem really wasn't a praxis problem. It was a listening comprehension, what we call receptive language problem, interfere with her ability to even do the task because she couldn't remember what she's even supposed to do. So by comparing OT data from speech data to neuropsych data, you get a better, more clear picture of where are the real deficit skills and which ones are the lowest level skills, and that's where you start the intervention. So the pioneering realm of what we do is a developmental science approach to build from foundational skills up to next level skills. So it's not so much that we have a strategy, we don't have a gimmick, we don't have a support or a tool that just is going to work around it. We are focused on one thing, which is empowerment.
Yes.
How to take weaker skills and make them stronger so that we don't need strategies, so that we don't need assistive technologies. Assistive technologies are great if we have no research on how to change the deficit skills. But using assistive technology for dyslexia makes no sense. We have highly effective programs to change reading skills, and that gives the child or the teen or the adult a much higher level of function if they no longer struggle to read. The assistive technology usually is never quite as efficient, never quite as effective, and really doesn't allow the person to perform at their full potential. It can assist a bit, it can raise their performance a little bit, but it's not the same as taking the deficit and turning it into a strength. And then the child is not as dependent.
That's great. Focusing on the strengths and thinking it through. It's like you think the whole thing through and just be, sensitive to what's going on, and thinking it through, being logical about it, a logical approach.
Yeah, and it's really what we call developmental science.
Mhm. That's great. Many
Yeah.
parents and educators may be unfamiliar with the latest research and strategies for assisting children with learning disorders. What advice would you provide them?
It's a challenging question for me to answer because we don't focus on strategies. What we do try to focus on, if we can decrease tactile sensitivities,
Mhm.
then we don't have to worry about what kind of clothing you put on a child because they're less bothered by the tag in the shirt.
Oh, yeah.
If you couldn't change their sensitivities, then one strategy would be, hey, they don't like scratchy fabrics, buy soft fabrics.
Mhm.
Hey, they're more aversive to too much acoustic sound around them. Okay, let's use headphones or let's use earplugs. But what if we could actually change that system? What if we could decrease the hypersensitivity and get it to be able to function with less higher response? Then you've actually given the child a greater level of function and a greater control and ability to function in environments. So the environment doesn't have to accommodate to them, or they don't have to go find the technology to help them survive in the environment. They have been rewired, repowered. You've empowered their brain to be able to do more. And that's what learning really is. Learning is what we call experience-dependent neuroplasticity. It kind of equates to this. Let's say, Karen, you decided you want to learn German. If nobody speaks to you in German and nobody shows you German writing and nobody shows you German spelling, you're probably not going to learn German because you're not getting the experiences that you need to build the skills.
Mhm.
But there's also this issue of what are the right experiences and when do you do which experiences? And like we said earlier, there's foundational skills you should be strengthening first and higher level skills you should be strengthening later. So it's trying to understand a developmental model of how these skills build and make sure we're shoring up the foundational skills first before you go to the higher level skills, because then you've got a better chance of having a higher level and a greater level of function. The
Interesting.
easiest way I can explain that is in one of our NIH studies, we compared a phonics program where you just teach letters and sounds, and you do word families, and you do a lot of book reading, looking for words that have AI in them, looking for words that have PH in them, and it's all letters focused. That's what phonics is. It's all about the letters, and then kind of learning about the sounds from the letters.
Mhm.
Our Now Foundations program is the reverse. It's speech processing first, written language, the letters later. And we compared the two. We found that when you do phonics instruction, kids get a little bit better at sounding out words. They get a little bit better at their phonological awareness, but it doesn't change their spelling and it doesn't change their reading speed, and it may or may not change their reading comprehension. But if you do the other approach, which is that bottom-up language processing, speech processing first, written processing second, the testing showed we changed multiple things. We changed verbal expressive skills. We changed listening comprehension skills. We did change reading accuracy. We did improve spelling accuracy. We did see changes in reading fluency and changes in reading comprehension. So if you have 100 hours to do on this program, you'll get these results. And if you do 100 hours in this program, you might get these results. And both take the same amount of time and the same cost. And so the question is, as parents, you're trying to find the programs that give you larger results for the same amount of investment, the same amount of cost, and potentially the same amount of time. So I encourage parents not to look as much as for strategies as to look for developmental science. There's people publishing research every day. Right? There's one thing that holds back our kids. Your son's progress in autism, my children's progress with their dyslexia. There's only one thing that holds back how much they're going to progress. And Karen, it's us. And it's what we don't know yet. So as we as researchers, as we as scientists study more, learn more, we can actually do more. And dyslexia today is no different than dyslexia in the 60s when Patricia Lindenmuth wrote her first phonological awareness multisensory training program was 1969. The dyslexia of the 69 is the same as 2023. The difference is we've done a lot more research in that time period. We know how to identify at age 5. We know how to intervene at age 5. And we know how to get more than 95% of children at age 5 not struggling to read or spell. Why? Because we've done the research. We know more now. We better identify and we can better treat and change the skills.
That's good. That's good. I hope in 20 years from now, we'll know a lot more about autism too, and other types of neurodevelopmental disorders.
Absolutely.
Could you discuss the challenges and opportunities in fostering inclusivity and supporting individuals with autism within educational and social settings?
Yeah, I think our challenge right now is education is still philosophy ideology based.
Mhm.
I did a TED Talk in 2015. My TED Talk has a very targeted title. The title is How to Mix Oil and Water So Nearly Everyone Learns to Read. And
Oh,
I
wow.
explicitly chose that title because we have the oil of education with its philosophy and ideology, and we have the water of evidence-based science, where you test programs and figure out which one program is the most effective. Why do we want to do that? Well, because physicians choose penicillin for strep throat, because by randomized controlled trials, we know that's the best antibiotic for strep throat for most people. But typically, physicians don't choose penicillin for ear infections. And the question should be why? Why not? Well, because somebody did some randomized controlled trials and found that these other antibiotics are more effective at treating the bacteria that causes ear infections than penicillin is. So penicillin is not always the answer for everything, but it's been still shown to be the most effective treatment for strep throat. Now, in education, many educators are being misled, and they're being told, if the research is more than 5 years old, don't even waste your time on it. It's old, it's outdated. Look for the new research. Well, Karen, let's take that analogy to medicine. When did they do the research on penicillin? Try about 70 years ago. And boy, from that philosophy of educators, that if it's more than 5 years old, throw it out. Well, we should have thrown penicillin out a long time ago.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's absurd, because no research has shown another antibiotic is more effective for strep throat than penicillin. So we keep using it. So it's trying to get these principles of science into education and help educators not get a watered down version. Another example of that is there's a new popular, we have edu-celebrities, we have edu-celebrity terminology as well. The new popular edu-celebrity in terminology is the science of reading. And what it's couched to be is it's a body of research, and it's about what are the best practices, best methods. But what we do in the science of reading is we don't tell the teachers the methods. We give them the list of ingredients. And so we say, you need to have a reading program with phonological awareness. It needs to have comprehension, it needs to have fluency, it needs to have morphology. We kind of list a few laundry list items of what we want to be sure is in a reading program. But what we hold back is, but we're not going to give you the recipe that the scientists tested and was the most effective way to deliver those. How much of which program, how often, to what degree of mastery, to what degree of intensity. It's kind of like saying, if cookbooks gave you the list of ingredients that you might use in a cake, but didn't tell you how much flour, how many eggs, when to mix it, when we're giving you the ingredients without the recipe. And that's ridiculous. But we've misled a whole generation of teachers now to say, if you jump on the bandwagon of the science of reading, your kids will get better. No, but that's not true, because we're giving you the ingredients and you're having to mix it up and guess what to do. So we've left the profession in the same field of guessing without taking the science to the next step of, but if the researchers have done the studies and found out what programs are most effective, why aren't we giving the programs to the educators and not just giving them the list of ingredients that were in some of those programs? So we're trying to help empower in the educational environment. What will really foster inclusivity is, one, the adaptation or adoption of evidence-based practices that are scientifically tested evidence-based. Some programs that are sold to educators for autism or for learning difficulties, it's the program gave their method to a class at a school, they used it, and some kids got better. And so the publisher says, we have evidence that our program works, so we're going to call it evidence-based. Another group like myself and the Morris Center or the Now Company, we did a peer-reviewed study vetted by scientists that showed high effectiveness. And then we did 3 5-year randomized controlled trials. And we are using the same terminology. We are evidence-based. But just getting a classroom to show some progress and doing 15 years of high-powered research, those are not the same definitions of evidence-based. So what will empower educators and our social environments even better is an even richer understanding of how much science can help empower what to do, when to do it, how much, for how long, and what comes next. And what skills can you build on simultaneously, and what skills are hierarchically organized. This skill is lower level, this skill is higher level, versus sometimes there's several skills all at foundational level, and you can actually be doing OT or speech therapy or some intensive therapies that work across those same skills at the same level. So that's going to give us the best chance to be able to include more students because we have a better understanding of how their brain is working and a better understanding of what to do to help give them more strengths. And that's just a whole unique approach at the Moore Center is how do we give the child more strengths to give a higher degree of independent function so they can pursue their own passions and their own interests.
Wow. Yeah, it's like they should have evidence-based what year,
Yes.
seal of
Yeah.
approval, evidence-based, 2.0 or, whatever, just to define when it was evidence-based and, some type of a measurement in the evidence-based criteria or something. I don't know. But
Exactly.
they're doing wonderful, wonderful work. And I think it's going to really, really help a lot of people. I'd like to circle back and next year, same time, same station, and see, move the bar in one direction. That's great.
It would be a pleasure, Karen. We built a new clinic in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, which is just outside of Jacksonville, which is where I am today. And it has a 20 by 20, 10-foot tall sensory gym apparatus to hold all the equipment used to build on the vestibular system and the visual spatial system and the fine motor skill system. And so we're investing a lot in these OT systems that go along with modulation and build attention and help us also build language skills. So we're excited to keep building out those services, keep adding more center clinics. We're about to open another clinic in St. Louis, Missouri. So
Nice.
we'll keep promoting more clinics, but then we're also going to be pushing into more school settings. So our online company today is writing contracts with schools, and we're pushing in our evidence-based program into the schools because we can offer the program at a higher fidelity with a higher degree of expertise than the teachers can themselves. And the schools have access to a new set of funding called ESSER funds. Karen, there's $200 billion of ESSER funds in the United States. It's a phenomenal amount of money to help what we call close the COVID gap of get the literacy skills caught back up. And so the Now company has hundreds of children online in schools, and the schools are actually paying for the services, and it's free to the parents. And that's because we help the schools access the ESSER funds. And that way they can partner with private business who are scientist-run businesses that will help bring them the high caliber evidence-based programs. So we're excited that more things are coming. And I saw that you even highlighted how Dr. Doreen Grandpichet, thank you, is now just bought back her company and is now going to be revitalizing the card centers. And she's a clinical psychologist, and she understands you got to run these businesses from the science clinician perspective first, the financial perspective second. So we're excited there will be even more autism services from Dr. Grandpichet in those card centers around the United States and other folks who have built companies trying to become more evidence-based in their services. And that's the number one thing parents can be doing to help make sure that what they're choosing for their child has the best caliber of research that backs it up and gives them the best chance for the most progress and the most gain.
And hopefully more countries too, maybe Canada, maybe globally.
Absolutely.
You guys can reach out and reach into other countries, because what you're doing is very amazing and really needs to reach into other places, because that's what I'm doing as a World Autism Summit. And how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about their, how they can get into their centers, their schools?
Absolutely. We've got two main websites. For the medical clinics called the Morris Center, it's just themorriscenter.com. And then for the online company, which is called Neurodevelopment of Words, the acronym is NOW, because we're going to get you reading now, we're going to get you spelling now, we're going to empower your comprehension now, your writing skills now, and we actually even empower math skills all online. And that's just at the website of nowprograms.net. And both of those websites have links to connect and ask for more information. The Moore Center clinics do free consultations. The Now company does free consultations. We, as a public service, try to share as much information as possible about what's available and what is in your area as well, versus also what do we have in our clinics or even through the online company too. And we are pushing out more clinics into more locations in the US and abroad as well. And there's one way I'm doing that, and Karen, it's called a perpetual purpose business trust. That means I'm not going to repeat the mistake that Dr. Doreen Grandpichet experienced, which is never selling the companies, but all the companies transfer into a trust And the trust has a legal manager and a board of directors manager. And this mission of the Morris Center, the Now Company, will live long beyond my lifetime. It'll live long beyond my children's lifetime, and it'll stay true to this evidence-based practice. And we'll also begin to start participating in conducting more research. We need evidence-based OT services. There's still some gaps in those areas of OT. We need more evidence-based for speech services. We need more evidence-based for how do you empower comprehension. And I know in an interview that you did a long time ago with Temple Grandin, Dr. Grandin was talking about imagery and how she pictures things, and she sees a teapot, it's a still, then it becomes a movie. The Now Company and that nowprograms.net, one of their curriculums that they actually use is a program that teaches anybody how to make movies. Because everybody's brain has the potential to make movies. If you haven't had the experience, though, you don't have the skills, just like learning German. So we've got a way to actually give the experience, build the skills. And that's the wonderful thing about the technologies. And the last piece we're bringing is we're building artificial intelligence-based apps. That's our fastest way to distribute information and train knowledge and give the experiences with the lowest price point and the highest fidelity of instruction. So you'll start to see apps coming out from us in the next 6 to 12 months, and they'll start to be able to empower skills without coming to a clinic or even without doing the online intervention. It'll be readily available in an interactive app on a tablet or on a phone, and that's going to help us really have a much larger global impact.
That's great. That's so great. I love it.
Thank you, Karen.
Are there any other words you want to say to the audience?
I just want to tell parents that your child only has one limitation, and that's the professional you're working with. Your child will only make as much progress as what that professional knows today. If that professional tells you your child has reached maximum improvement, what they're really saying is you've exceeded their knowledge base. And your next step should be go find somebody else who has evidence that they know more, has science backing up what they think they know and what they think they can do, and keep pushing for your child to make more progress. In rehab, as it is in developmental science, there's only one guarantee. If you don't work on it, it's probably not going to get better. So the question is, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Where are you going to do it? Who are you going to do it with? And know that keep searching, keep finding, but look for the programs that have the best science that backs them up. That gives you the most confidence and assurance that the money, time, investment you're going to make gives your child, your teenager, or even yourself as an adult with dyslexia or an adult with autism, gives yourself the best chance to make the most gains in skills that you'd like to strengthen. Nice.
Thank you so much, Tim. So everybody reach out to Tim Conway now.
A pleasure to be with you, and we wish all the best for the World Autism Summit. And we expect great things in the future.
Thank you, Tim.
My pleasure.